Speaking of Raw, SmackDown, it was kind of hinted at without them actually saying that it's coming back, that we might be getting the return of the wild card rule. Now, that debuted almost exactly a year ago on Raw, which allowed, it started with 3, then turned to 4 that same night, I think. 4 talents from Raw to appear on SmackDown and vice versa. Now, that number was quickly done away with. They never paid attention to it again. And people were on both shows every freaking week for months and months and months before they went away with it. They went away from it in time for the draft, which I really appreciate. I like distinct rosters. It gives me a reason to want to watch one show to see a specific superstar. I don't want to see King Corbin on Raw, but that's just me. But it looks like they might be going back to that, if only subtly in the beginning. I mean, it won't stop them from completely abusing it, going forward, but we are having King Corbin next week on Raw facing Drew McIntyre, his old running mate from about a year and a half ago. And then on SmackDown this Friday, we're getting the NXT Women's Champion Charlotte on the show. So what are your thoughts, RJ, on the apparent return of the wild card role, and are you in favor of it or not?
I would say no, I'm not in favor of it. I think the idea is stupid. I understand that they keep thinking that since the ratings are declining, they need to keep influxing talent from show to show, but in the real scheme of things, it should be developing the talent you have into being stars, and then from there you have to rely on flip-flopping people on different shows and just kind of getting the same people on Raw and SmackDown every week. That just, if anything, it's going to turn people away from watching both shows, because if you're going to see someone on Raw, then why watch them on SmackDown as well? Kind of defeats the purpose. But I think it just comes back to the same core thought that we always have, is they need to build more stars, because if you had more stars, then you have to rely on people switching shows.
Yeah, I mean, the Raw ratings now, I was going to talk about this when we got to Raw in a little bit, but we might as well address it now. Raw ratings are at an all-time low. And SmackDown's ratings aren't that low yet because they're on Fox, but they're quickly approaching the same territory they were in when they were on USA, less than half a year ago. And I think they're kind of bottoming out at like 2 million. You would think with Raw, people have been saying for years, they'll never go past 2 million viewers. Like, they have their core 2 million viewers, and not even those people are around anymore. Like, we're at 1.6 million people a week now. I think this week it was a bit higher, but that's still not a good sign. I don't think the wild card rule coming back will change any of that, will change their fortunes whatsoever. I think the damage has been done. I don't think it's Drew's fault. I don't think it's, who's the Universal Champion, Braun Strowman's fault. I don't think it's any of those guys' fault. I think it's the fault of the company for not putting more stock in the talent of today and tomorrow as they do the people of the past when it comes to, giving people a reason to want to watch these shows. Because they focused very heavily going into WrestleMania on, The Undertaker, John Cena, Goldberg, Edge, who is, still around, but Brock Lesnar. They're not on the shows anymore, so why would people want to watch these shows? I know the lack of crowds is obviously a factor, people cutting the cord because they can't afford it. I totally understand that. But, if Stone Cold Steve Austin was at the peak of his popularity as he was in 97, 98, 99, in today's modern era, people wouldn't have to cut the cord because they would want to watch Raw every week. So I don't think it's the fault of people today. It's just years and years and years of abuse to the modern day roster, to the point where now we're finally seeing the damage of them doing that, with the current stars not feeling special whatsoever.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's like, people don't understand, if it was like back in 99 or 98 when the Attitude Era was hot, it's no different if they brought like Piper back and Hogan back to be like the big attractions and just take away from those guys that are trying to get to that star level back then. But now they just do it with these current guys. Bring back the old dinosaurs just to pop a rating, when you could just make new stars and actually make them as popular as these legends are. But like you said, they just can't stop focusing on these legends, and it's really hindering people's retaining. People aren't entertained as much anymore, because you just have to bring out the old guys back, and you have no stars now. You can only rely on them for so long. Even the Undertaker, He's a big guy, but even just watching his documentary, he's in pain. The guy can barely get through one match, let alone making somewhat of a run. So clearly that well is going to dry up soon with the Undertaker. The guy can barely wrestle one match. So it's interesting to see what they're going to do. Like you said, the wild card rule, I don't think is going to change anything for ratings, just because you're switching people that aren't really that big of a star anyway. So why would that pull people to watch SmackDown or watch Raw because King Corbin's on Raw? Come on. No one's going to tune in because he's on the show.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it doesn't... I think what people have to realize, too, is that people have this idea in their head, like, fuck WWE because go AEW, and if they fail, AEW will rise. when they turn away wrestling fans, WWE that is, and even other companies, but I single out WWE because they're the biggest game in town here. If they turn people away from watching the show, I guarantee you, I don't know what the ratio would be. A lot of these people, unless they're diehard wrestling fans, they're not going to say, "Oh, let me go watch another show." They just won't give a shit. They just won't give a fuck about professional wrestling, and then they just won't watch. I think it hurts the business overall that they do this, because then the fans, it's not like when WCW died, the fans didn't migrate over to WWE because the product was so bad. They just went away and they never came back. I feel like a lot can be said with the same thing with WWE, where they screw over the fans time and time and time again. I have enjoyed the product recently, but I'm talking about long-term booking here, where a lot of these people do not feel special. And McIntyre's been booked very well, which I applaud them for. But, it's just years and years of booking malpractice with a lot of these people to the point where fans just won't come back. I am convinced, dude, that I don't think when this whole thing is over that the ratings are going to skyrocket and that crowds will be, hotter than they've ever been. Some of these people just may stop watching the shows currently and may never come back. A lot of people just move on to the next thing. That's just human nature. They don't go back like, oh, wrestling's back on now. Like, unless you're a diehard fan like me and you, for the most part, a lot of people just aren't going to go back. So that's my biggest gripe with this whole thing,
Yeah, at this point, there's no incentive. If you stop watching, what's going to change? Like, the shows won't change much once they go back to a live crowd. Yeah, there'll be a crowd there and kind of give you that old wrestling dynamic of a crowd and kind of that feeding off, like a match feeding off the crowd. But it's like you said, it's not like all of a sudden just because they have a crowd, they're going to have these great shows again. It's going to be the same thing. So if you're detracting people now, the chances of them coming back is very little.